today's Rowdy.com Big Three heading into an off weekend for the Cup Series. I'm Bass Masters, he's Buck Beaver. We talk NASCAR with Jerome Buzz Cutler, who asks us the three burning questions of the day.
I'm over here. Here I am.
Hello, Buzz.
So, Kelly Earnhardt-Elledge had some interesting comments yesterday or the day before. I think it was probably the day before when they took the three into the Hall of Fame. She was like, look, if they're going to make changes to the Nationwide Series, limiting the number of times Cup drivers can compete and trying to develop younger drivers, they have to let us know because I got sponsorship issues that I can't solve because sponsors want to buy personalities, not developmental drivers. They got to, figure out what they're doing here.
I agree. I think there's a whole system with drivers coming up through the Nationwide, through the trucks, to the Nationwide, to Cup, that in your mind you think of it like as, you take the next step up, you take the next step up, you take the next step up. But as we know, the Cup drivers basically dominate the Nationwide Series. So in that context, as a team that's running basically full-time and only in the Nationwide Series, not a Cup team with a Nationwide car, but Junior Motorsports is a nationwide team really right now, what do? Do you put Cup drivers in there? Do you try to develop young drivers? If you trying to develop a young guy, he's just going to get outrun by these Cup guys.
Yeah, if you're Kelly Earnhardt, you run Cup guys. If you own a Nationwide team and you can run a Cup guy, you will run him every single
Unless
time.
Unless you got Danica Patrick.
Or Danica Patrick. Cup
That's
guys
an example of personality.
But it's all about marketing. It's all about money. It's all about personality. I'm not saying it's right. I'm starting to think that NASCAR should limit it.
But what NASCAR has to understand is if they do limit it, and I think perhaps they should, there's going to be a sponsorship money issue, and are these teams going to be able to compete?
And you ask yourself this. Can we, in this current state of affairs, economically, afford to take a short-term hit for a long-term gain? And,
you do.
It's like running budget deficits. Now's not the time to start cutting that stuff, even because that's a long-term problem. You've got a real short-term problem you have to focus on before you can solve the long-term problem. The only issue there is if you're always solving the short-term problem, you never get to the long-term problem. When is the right time? NASCAR has to answer that question, and it's not an easy one to answer.
Well, speaking of long-term, let's move on to issue number 2. I would like to share with you a quote from Kelly's little brother.
We could make the chase, but it just becomes a pain in the ass because then we're in the chase, but we're not contenders, and we got to do all the horse shit that you got to do as a chase member, and going to New York and all that stuff. So it ends up being more work than it is anything else. So
here's the question: Is making the chase for the Sprint Cup Championship a pain in the ass?
Yes, for Dale Jr., sure, it's going to be a pain in his ass. Absolutely, because there's no way Dale Jr. is going to win a championship in 2010. It's not going to happen.
One of the things we love about Jr.
It's truthful.
Is his honesty. And he's kind of calling it like he sees it, but there's two ways to look at it. One is he's being a realist, and two is like he's got an attitude problem. You got to fight for everything you get in the hopes that you can turn it around at some point. Is it likely that Junior's going to win a championship this year? No, it's really not likely. He's not very fast. He's going to have a tough time just making the chase. So in the end, it could be a pain in the ass for Junior to run in the chase and not compete for championship. But what's the alternative? Not running in the chase at all. Is that any less of a pain in the ass? I guess. You think people are going to ask him fewer questions?
Well, let me ask you.
Ask him all about why he didn't make the chase.
Let me ask you this question. In the stick and ball sports, they always talk about, well, this team doesn't have a lot of playoff experience, so they're at a disadvantage in the postseason. Does that hold true, you think, in the chase?
I'm sure it does.
It doesn't.
In other words,
will
making the chase for Junior prepare him better to make the chase?
I think so.
Totally.
I think it does hold true.
And plus, the other thing is, if you get into the chase, and especially in his case, it means he has progressed and he's getting better, and that your equipment is better. So that's good.
And better. All right, let's move on.
I go back to what he said. What do you want to do? Finish 30th? It's like you want to do the best you can.
Right.
Because that's better.
Because it's better.
So let's move.
Better than being less good.
You bet. Let's move on to issue number 3.
Don't let go of the code.
Our good buddy Jeff Gluck. Maybe is he our frenemy or is he just our friend?
No, he's my friend. I don't know about Buck.
Yeah, he's Buck's friend.
Always being mean to him.
He's not being mean to Jeff Gluck.
You hate Jeff Gluck and he feels it.
I do not.
Jeff Gluck wrote an interesting article over at SBNation.com the other day where he basically said, look, the reason TV ratings are down is because NASCAR is inherently unwatchable on TV.
No, this TV's not doing a good job covering the sport.
Yeah.
And specifically he said there were way too many commercial breaks.
Well,
I think it's a giant catch-22 because we got to have commercials, we got to have sponsors. I personally, the World Cup didn't have commercials, so they pulled that off, and I like the picture-in-picture. I think that's what we could do.
in my opinion, the world of advertising is changing big time because people have so many options for ways to get content on demand and to time shift it that they're essentially skipping commercials a lot of the time anyway. So the whole idea of content, stop content, commercial, content, stop content, commercial, that's evolving and changing.
Done.
Now for NASCAR in particular, that model isn't really the best. Works great for football, works great for baseball, where you have all these natural breaks in the program to drop in your commercials. Racing's not like that. It's their opportunity to get ahead of this curve and figure out what does advertising look like in the future. I'm not saying drop all commercial breaks and air the thing commercial free right away or anything like that, but try to figure out some other revenue streams. Again, short term it may be challenging for you because you've got this model, advertisers will come, they'll buy 30-second spots from you and you put the money in your bank account. But long term, it's going to be different, better for you to get ahead of that and figure it out now.
I mean, that...
I couldn't agree more.
I'm trying to do, what was it?
Formulate a thought. Formulating, and go. Still formulating. Still formulating.
Thank you for watching today's Rowdy.com Big Three. We'll be back on Monday, and maybe by that time, Buck Fever will have
a thought.
formulated his thought.
Formulating.
Ask.com. The way they did their advertising, the way they weave their into the actual
Come out on
content.
Rowdy.
Come out on Rowdy.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Rowdy.com. Say it like it is.
Say what like it is?
Rowdy.com.